My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32, a hospice nurse in Denver. People say I'm too trusting for my own good. They waited for me to die in silence, whispering behind closed doors, dividing my belongings before I was even gone. What they never imagined was that I'd live long enough to watch their lives unravel instead. If you're listening, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Has family ever betrayed you like this? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to know. I grew up believing family was the safest place you could stand in this world. My father used to say, "Emily, blood is thicker than anything, remember that." And I believed him. Maybe too much. I lived a modest life. My small apartment overlooked the Rockies, the kind of view that makes you stop and breathe even after a brutal 12-hour night shift. I wasn't married. I had friends, sure, but work consumed me. Caring for people in their last days gave me perspective. It made me softer, more patient. But it also blinded me. I thought people closest to me would care for me the same way. My family was complicated. My younger brother Ryan is always chasing schemes. My cousin Laura, the self-proclaimed responsible one, who smiled sweetly but kept score on everyone. And then there was Aunt Margaret, the matriarch after my parents passed. She ran every family gathering like a stage play, assigning roles, deciding who mattered and who didn't. To them, I was the fragile one. The nurse with too much heart and not enough backbone. I didn't fight when Ryan borrowed money and forgot to pay it back. I didn't complain when Laura talked over me at Thanksgiving. And when Aunt Margaret said, "Emily, you're lucky to have us, dear," I smiled, even though it stung. I told myself these were small things. Families bicker, families bruise. But I should have paid closer attention because under all that polite laughter and holiday dinners, something darker was brewing. I just couldn't see it yet. It started with whispers. At first, I thought it was my exhaustion. Long shifts, low sleep, walking into Margaret's kitchen, and catching Ryan's eyes dart away. Or Laura leaning in to whisper, her voice soft but sharp, like glass cutting through butter. One evening after Sunday dinner, I walked past the hallway and froze. Ryan's voice low but urgent. "She doesn't have long, trust me. We need to be ready," my breath caught. I pressed my back to the wall, straining to hear. Laura answered, her tone dripping with certainty. "Good. When it happens, we move quickly. No delays." I wanted to step in to ask, "What do you mean?" "Who doesn't have long?" But my body betrayed me. I stayed frozen, like a child hiding from monsters. They were talking about me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying their words over and over. Was it my health? I had been feeling drained, yes. Some days, even lifting a patient's chart felt heavy. But dying? No. Surely not. The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. Pale skin, hollow eyes. Maybe they were right. Maybe something was wrong. I pushed the thought away. Work would distract me. But at the hospice, even my patients noticed. Mrs. Green, frail and sharp-eyed, whispered as I adjusted her pillow. "You're sick, aren't you, dear?" I forced a smile. Just tired. But inside, her words echoed. Weeks passed, and the whispers grew louder. Papers were stacked on Margaret's desk when I visited. Legal folders? I caught my name once, bold and underlined. She snapped the drawer shut when she saw me looking. Laura started dropping comments like breadcrumbs. "You know, Em, some people just fade away before their time." Or Ryan smirking, "Guess we'll all have to step up when you're gone." I laughed it off, but my stomach churned each time. Until one night, after a long shift, I returned to find an envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address, just my name in bold ink. Inside was a single piece of paper, typed, cold. "Your family knows you're dying. The will is already written. They're waiting." I sat on my couch, the letter trembling in my hands. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might stop right there. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. They weren't just waiting. They were planning, and suddenly I realized maybe I wasn't dying at all. Maybe they just wanted me gone, but why? I folded the letter back into the envelope, my hands shaking. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just hurt. I was terrified. Because if they were willing to wait in silence for me to die, what else were they capable of? I should have seen it sooner. Looking back, the signs were woven into every holiday, every dinner, every carefully staged photograph Aunt Margaret insisted we take. But when you're raised to believe love means sacrifice, you don't question the small cuts. You just learn to bleed quietly. My childhood was simple. My father, Daniel, worked construction, hands calloused, back always aching. My mother, Helen, stayed home, making sure Ryan and I never felt the weight of bills we couldn't pay. We lived in a modest Denver neighborhood, the kind with cracked sidewalks and kids playing basketball in driveways until the streetlights buzzed on. Family meant everything to me. I was the kind of girl who clung to traditions. Pumpkin carving in October, hot chocolate and carols at Christmas. Birthdays where we all crowded into Margaret's house because it was big enough to hold the Carters and then some. After my parents passed, my father from a work accident, my mother from a stroke just 2 years later, it was Margaret who stepped in. She was my mother's older sister, wealthy from a string of real estate investments. She swept in like a savior, insisting Ryan and I would always have a roof and a seat at her table. But there were strings. Margaret had rules, unspoken but suffocating. She decided who spoke first at dinner, who carved the turkey, and who poured the wine. She decided which stories mattered and which ones she cut off mid-sentence. And Ryan? He flourished under her attention. She loved his reckless charm, his get-rich-quick ideas, his promises of big returns. He was the golden boy. I was the afterthought. Laura, my cousin, was Margaret's shadow. A lawyer, polished and precise, she looked at me the way people look at broken things. Pity first, then irritation. "Emily, you're too soft," she'd say, sipping her wine. "This world eats people like you alive." I'd laugh nervously, pretending it was a joke. Pretending it didn't sting. But beneath her polished smile, I often caught something sharper. A flash of calculation. A hunger for control. One winter, about a year before the letter, Margaret hosted Christmas Eve like always. The house glowed with lights, candles flickered on polished silver, and the air was thick with cinnamon and cloves. Ryan bragged about his latest venture, some online trading scheme that sounded suspiciously illegal. Laura rolled her eyes but smiled when Margaret praised him. I sat quietly, helping clear plates, listening. That's what I always did. Listen. But as I carried a tray into the kitchen, I caught a sliver of conversation that froze me mid-step. "Laura, when it happens, everything falls to us." "That's the way it should be." Ryan. "Yeah, poor Emily. She won't even see it coming. I nearly dropped the tray." Margaret entered, her tone sharp. Not another word. Their voices fell silent. When she saw me standing there, her smile stretched tight, her voice suddenly sweet. "Emily, dear, don't overwork yourself." Sit. We've got it handled." Handled. That word clawed at me for days. I told myself they were talking about something else. Maybe Margaret's will. Maybe Ryan's debts. It couldn't be me. Why would it be me? But the small cracks widened. Margaret stopped inviting me to certain family discussions. Ryan grew bold, borrowing money he never intended to repay. Laura started dropping remarks about what comes next, as though the future was already written, and always. I felt it, the subtle push, the quiet exclusion, like I was being erased while still breathing. One night, as snow fell heavily outside, I visited Margaret's study to return a book. Her desk was covered in papers, neatly stacked. At the top, I saw my own name, Emily Carter. Bold, underlined. Beneath it, words I couldn't fully read before she appeared in the doorway. Her tone was honey, but her eyes were steel. "Looking for something, dear?" I stammered. "Just returning the book." She crossed the room in 2 strides, slid the papers into a drawer, and locked it. "Curiosity is dangerous, Emily." The way she said it chilled me. That night, lying awake, I thought about how my parents used to protect me. How they shielded me from things I wasn't ready to face. Now, it seemed, the people left to care for me were doing the opposite, not protecting me. preparing for me to disappear. I told myself I was imagining it, that grief and exhaustion were twisting my perception. But when I found another envelope the next week, this one slipped into my work locker, I knew it wasn't just in my head. The second envelope was worse than the first. It was smaller, folded crudely, almost as if someone had written it in a rush. My hands trembled as I unfolded the page. Stop trusting them. They're waiting. That was all it said. No signature. No clue who had slipped it into my locker. I read it over and over during my break, my stomach in knots. My patients trusted me with their most intimate fears. Why couldn't I even trust my own family? When I brought it up at dinner the following Sunday, the air grew colder than the roast on Margaret's table. I've been getting strange notes, I admitted, voice hesitant. Someone says I shouldn't trust you. Ryan laughed first, loud and mocking. Oh, come on, Em. What, did a secret admirer forget how to confess properly? Laura smirked, swirling her wine. Or maybe you're working too many night shifts. Sleep deprivation does wild things to the brain. Margaret's eyes narrowed, her smile tight. Emily, darling, you've always had an overactive imagination. Don't let shadows play tricks on you. Their words sliced me in different ways. Mockery from Ryan, condescension from Laura, dismissal from Margaret. I forced a laugh, tried to brush it off, but inside, something shifted. A seed of doubt had been planted. The cracks widened quickly after that. Ryan showed up at my apartment one evening, unannounced. He reeked of whiskey, his grin sloppy and cruel. You got any cash, sis? He slurred. Just a couple $100. You don't need it like I do. I folded my arms. Ryan, I can't keep bailing you out. His smile twisted. You think you're better than me? You're not. You're weak, you're… Temporary? I whispered. He shrugged, already turning away. We all are. Some sooner than others. I shut the door behind him, my chest tight, his words echoing long after he stumbled into the night. At work, my body began betraying me too. My hands shook when I held syringes. My vision blurred at the edges after hours on my feet. Maybe they were right. Maybe something was wrong with me. But the notes kept coming. One slipped into my mailbox, another tucked under my car wiper. Always typed, always cold. They're planning. Stay alive. Don't eat what they give you. That last one left me staring at the untouched casserole Margaret had sent home with me. I dumped it straight into the trash, bile rising in my throat. I started testing them. At dinner, I mentioned my doctor's appointment, though I hadn't scheduled one. Laura's fork froze midair, her eyes darting to Margaret. Doctor? Margaret asked, voice too smooth. Yes, I said lightly. Full workup. Blood tests, scans, everything, Ryan scoffed. Waste of money. If something's wrong, it'll show up on its own. Laura's smile didn't reach her eyes. Well, keep us updated. Family deserves to know. Everything. The way she said everything made my skin crawl. Then came the cruelest moment. It was Margaret's birthday, a gathering full of laughter and wine. She made her usual toast, glass raised high, to family, the only people we can truly rely on. Everyone clapped. I forced a smile. But later, when I stepped into the kitchen to grab water, I caught Laura and Ryan again. Their voices were sharp, hurried. Laura, you told her too much. She suspects. Ryan, I didn't say anything. She's paranoid, Laura. Then keep her paranoid. It'll make her slip faster. I dropped the glass in my hand. It shattered on the tile, the sound like a gunshot. They both turned, their faces masks of innocence. Emily. Laura rushed forward, her voice too sweet. Are you okay? My hands shook as I picked up the shards. Fine, I whispered. Just clumsy. But inside, I was breaking. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, the envelopes spread out before me. My chest ached with betrayal, my mind spinning with possibilities. What were they planning? Why me? The letter's warning replayed in my head. Don't eat what they give you. Had they already tried? Was that why I felt so weak, so sick lately? I wrapped the envelopes with trembling hands, shoved them into a shoebox, and hid it under my bed. Proof. My only proof. But proof of what, exactly? The next morning, as I walked to my car, I froze. Scratched deep into the paint of my driver's side door were 3 words that turned my blood to ice. "You're already dead." The words on my car door burned into me for days. You're already dead. I drove to work with my heart racing, scanning the rearview mirror as if someone might follow. My hands trembled so badly I nearly clipped the curb pulling into the hospice lot. Inside, I was a shell. My patients noticed. "Emily," one whispered as I checked her IV. "You look haunted." Haunted was exactly how I felt. I tried to convince myself it was some cruel prank. Maybe kids from the neighborhood. Maybe Ryan, drunk and stupid. But the timing, the notes, the whispers, it was all too deliberate. The breaking point came at a family dinner 2 weeks later. Margaret called it a celebration of health. I almost didn't go, but skipping would raise suspicion, and part of me still clung to hope that I was wrong. The table was set as always. Polished silver, wine glasses catching the glow of the chandelier. Roast beef, potatoes, casseroles, and desserts lined up like offerings. Margaret raised her glass. "To Emily," she said, her smile sharp. "For always showing up no matter how fragile she feels." Laughter rippled around the table. My stomach dropped. "Fragile?" I asked, my voice tight. Laura leaned forward, smirking. "Well, you've been looking pale lately. Don't you think?" Ryan chuckled, stuffing food into his mouth. Like a ghost at her own funeral. The room erupted in laughter. I froze. Every eye was on me, every smile mocking. My cheeks burned, my throat dry. "You think this is funny?" I whispered. Margaret's voice dripped with condescension. "Emily, dear, don't be so sensitive. We're just worried about you. Isn't it better to laugh about what we can't control?" Her words hit me like a slap. What we can't control? As if my life, my health, my existence were already decided. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping hard against the wood floor. "I'm not dying." My voice shook but rose louder. "I'm not fragile. And I'm not your joke." The silence was heavy for a moment, until Ryan smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Then prove it." The air thickened. My pulse pounded in my ears. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice sharp. Ryan shrugged, glancing at Laura. She smiled coldly. "If you're not sick, Emily, show us. Medical records, tests." "Let us see." Margaret's hand rested on her wine glass, her expression unreadable. "Yes, dear. If you're truly healthy, there's no reason to keep it to yourself. Family deserves honesty." Their eyes pinned me like vultures circling prey. I shook my head, whispering, "That's none of your business." Ryan slammed his hand on the table, startling me so badly I flinched. "Then stop wasting our time pretending," he shouted. "We all know what's coming." His words cracked something inside me. I ran from the table, their laughter following me down the hall. My vision blurred, tears burning my eyes. I stumbled into the bathroom, gripping the sink, staring at my pale reflection. My chest heaved, rage and humiliation tangled in my throat. Behind me, muffled through the door, I heard Margaret's voice. Calm, steady, rehearsed. "She won't last long. We need to be ready." My knees buckled. My own family was declaring my death sentence while I was still standing in the next room. I left that night without saying goodbye. Drove home shaking, headlights blurring through tears. Every memory replayed in my mind. Margaret's patronizing smiles, Laura's cutting remarks, Ryan's cruel laughter. The notes, the scratches on my car, the casserole I'd thrown away. It all lined up now. They didn't just expect me to die. They wanted me gone. I sat on my couch until dawn, numb, my body heavy as stone. My phone buzzed with messages. Ryan, "Overreact much?" Laura, "Family is just worried." "Don't twist it." Margaret, "You embarrassed us, dear." Think carefully before doing that again. Embarrassed them. Not worried for me? Not concerned about my pain? Just embarrassed. My hands shook as I typed, then deleted, then typed again. Finally, I shut the phone off and shoved it in a drawer. The next morning, I opened my mailbox and froze. Inside was a thick envelope with no return address. I tore it open with shaking hands, and what fell into my lap made my blood run cold. It was a copy of a will. My name was there. Next to it, in bold, were the words, "Deceased." The will slipped from my hands and landed on the floor, the word "deceased" staring up at me like a death certificate for a woman still breathing. I sat frozen, the silence in my apartment deafening. My heart pounded, but the rest of me felt hollow, numb. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It wasn't whispers I could dismiss or laughter I could laugh off. It was written proof. Legal. Cold. Final. They had erased me before I was even gone. I called in sick to work the next day. And the next. My apartment became a prison. Curtains drawn, lights off, food untouched. I curled up on the couch, clutching the will, my chest aching with betrayal. I thought about my patients, how they faced death with courage, dignity. And here I was, not dying but already buried in my family's eyes. Nights blurred into days. My phone buzzed constantly, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Ryan left voicemails, drunk and rambling. Laura sent curt messages. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Margaret's words were the worst. "The sooner you accept it, the easier it will be for all of us." Accept what? My own death? I screamed, the sound raw, tearing my throat. The lowest moment came one evening when I finally dragged myself to the bathroom. I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. Pale skin, dark circles, hair matted from days of neglect. "You look dead," I whispered, voice shaking, and for a terrifying moment I believed it. My knees buckled, and I slid to the floor, sobs racking my body. I pressed my forehead against the cold tile, wishing I could disappear. No one would fight for me. No one would care if I vanished. My family was already living as though I were gone. For the first time, the thought entered my mind. Maybe it would be easier if I just let go. But then I remembered something. Mrs. Green. My patient with failing lungs once told me, "Don't let anyone decide when your story ends." Not doctors, not family. Only you. Her words echoed in my mind, cutting through the fog. Only me. I wasn't dead. Not yet. And if they wanted me gone so badly, maybe I needed to start asking why. The spark was small, but it grew. I gathered the envelopes, the notes, and the will and spread them across my table. Proof. Evidence. It wasn't much, but it was something. I scribbled everything I remembered in a notebook. Conversations, suspicious comments, every strange glance and hidden whisper. If they wanted me erased, I would carve my story into stone before I let that happen. My hands still trembled. My chest still ached. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. Anger. Hot, burning anger that seared through the fog of weakness. That night, I sat in bed, staring at the ceiling. My body still felt heavy, but my mind buzzed with clarity. If my family thought I'd roll over and fade away, they didn't know me at all. They had taken everything. My trust, my dignity, my sense of safety. But they hadn't taken my will to fight. "Not yet," I whispered into the dark, my voice raw but steady. "I won't stay broken." Cliffhanger ending for Part 5. The next morning, I packed the shoebox of evidence, slipped it into my bag, and drove past the city limits. For the first time, I wasn't running away. I was running toward something. Someone out there had sent those notes. Someone wanted me to survive, and I was going to find them. Driving out of Denver, I felt the weight of the shoebox on the passenger seat like a co-pilot. Inside were my only weapons: crumpled notes, a scratched car door photo, and the will declaring me dead before my time. Proof that I wasn't paranoid. Proof that my family wanted me erased. The mountains faded behind me as I pulled into a quiet coffee shop on the edge of a small town. My hands trembled as I ordered, my voice barely above a whisper. But when the waitress slid a steaming mug toward me, she gave me a look. Curious, almost kind. For the first time in weeks, I felt human. I spread the papers on the table, careful not to draw attention. Who had sent the notes? Whoever it was knew too much. They knew about the will, the whispers, the plans, and they wanted me to live. I scribbled a list in my notebook. Find the sender. Get legal proof. Don't let them know I'm on to them. I started small. At work, I quietly pulled strings with a doctor I trusted. Dr. Patel. She'd seen me at my lowest but never judged. I need a full medical workup, I told her one morning. Voice firm despite my shaking hands, she raised an eyebrow. Something wrong? Maybe, I admitted. Or maybe not. But I need proof. Hard proof, she nodded without pushing. Blood tests, scans, everything. We'll do it all. A week later, the results came back clean. No terminal illness. No hidden diagnosis. Just exhaustion and stress. When Dr. Patel handed me the folder, her eyes softened. Emily, you're not dying. You're strong. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. I clutched the folder like a shield. For the first time, I had undeniable proof. The next step was harder. I needed someone on the inside. Someone who knew what my family was plotting but wasn't fully part of it. That's when I thought of Aunt Margaret's housekeeper, Rosa. She'd worked for Margaret for over 15 years. Quiet, observant, invisible in the way staff often are around powerful people. I found her on her smoke break one chilly evening. Rosa, I said softly, can I ask you something? Her eyes flicked nervously to the house before she nodded. Do you know what they've been saying about me? I asked, my voice cracked. Please, I need the truth. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. Señorita, I shouldn't. But yes, they talk. They say you will not last, that everything is being prepared. Papers, lawyers, accounts. My stomach turned. Why? Why me? Rosa shook her head, stubbing out her cigarette. I don't know, but I've seen them meet in secret. Your name comes up often, always with coldness. She glanced back at the house, fear in her eyes. Be careful. They are not just waiting, they are planning. Her words lit a fire inside me. I began documenting everything. Every message, every offhand comment, every suspicious glance. I recorded conversations on my phone, careful to hide it. Ryan's drunken rants were the easiest. When you're gone, he slurred one night over the phone, it'll be smooth sailing. Finally, someone else gets a turn. Click. Recorded. Saved. Laura was hard, calculated, careful with her words. But her arrogance slipped once. Over wine, she told me, sometimes it's better to cut the weak link before it breaks the chain. Click. Recorded. Saved. Margaret never slipped. She was too polished, too controlled. But her papers, the ones I'd glimpsed on her desk, would speak for her. I just needed access. My plan took shape slowly, piece by piece. Step 1. Secure my health records as proof I wasn't sick. Done. Step 2. Gather recordings, notes, and every shred of evidence. In progress. Step 3. Find a way to expose them, legally, publicly, undeniably. I couldn't confront them head-on. They'd twist my words, make me look unstable. I had to be patient. I had to let them set the stage, and then pull the rug out from under them. One night, alone in my apartment, I spread everything on the table and whispered to myself, they think I'm already dead. Fine, let them think it. It'll make my strike even harder. For the first time, the fear in my chest was matched by something stronger. Determination. A week later, as I left the hospital after a long shift, I found another envelope tucked under my windshield wiper. This one wasn't typed. It was handwritten, and the words inside made my blood run cold. They know you're planning. Be careful who you trust. The handwritten note rattled me more than any of the typed ones. The words were jagged, rushed, almost panicked. They know you're planning. Be careful who you trust. Someone out there was watching me, helping me. But even they were afraid. Still, fear wasn't enough to stop me anymore. I was done curling into myself like prey. If they wanted to hunt me, then I would make sure they tripped their own traps first. The first opportunity came quicker than I expected. Ryan showed up at my apartment again. Drunk, his fists pounding on the door. Open up, Emily! he shouted, voice slurred. I know you're in there. Don't ignore me! I hit record on my phone before unlocking the chain. He stumbled inside, reeking of alcohol and sweat. You think you're better than us now? Hiding in your little hole, plotting against family? I stayed calm, heart hammering. What are you talking about, Ryan? His eyes narrowed. You think I don't know? Margaret says you're digging. Laura says you're paranoid. You're making us look bad. He jabbed a finger at me. You're dead weight, Emily. And soon, you'll just be dead. The words spilled out raw, unfiltered. Perfect. I ended the recording the second he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. My hands trembled, but this time it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline. I had proof. His own words, damning and brutal. The second win came through Rosa. She slipped me a manila envelope one evening, her hands shaking. I shouldn't, but I can't watch anymore, she whispered. Inside were photocopies of documents, financial transfers, legal drafts, signatures. My name threaded through them like a curse. Accounts prepared to be divided. Properties earmarked. Even my personal belongings are listed out like scraps at an auction. My chest tightened, bile rising in my throat. They had carved up my life while I was still breathing, but I wasn't powerless anymore. I now had proof that went beyond whispers and notes. Hard copies. Evidence. Thank you, I whispered to Rosa, my voice breaking. You don't know what this means. She squeezed my hand, her eyes full of fear. Be careful. They suspect someone is helping you. If they find out it's me, I nodded. I'll protect you. I promise. The third win came almost by accident. Laura invited me for coffee, her attempt to play nice. She leaned across the table, her voice low and sweet. Emily, you're making things difficult. Margaret just wants peace. Ryan is... Well, Ryan, but if you keep pushing, you'll regret it. I tilted my head, feigning innocence. What do you mean, regret it? She smirked. Let's just say fragile things break faster when they fight back. My phone, hidden in my pocket, caught every word. When I listened back later that night, a smile spread across my face for the first time in months. Piece by piece. I was building a case, but victories come with risks. Late one night, I came home to find my front door ajar. My stomach dropped. Slowly, I pushed it open. The apartment was a mess. Drawers yanked open. Papers scattered. The shoebox of evidence overturned. Someone had been searching. My pulse pounded as I dropped to my knees, scrambling to check. The recordings were still safe on my phone. The copies Rosa gave me were tucked into my bag from earlier. But the original letters, the first typed notes, they were gone. A message, clear as day. We know you're fighting back. I sat on the floor amid the chaos, clutching the shoebox to my chest. Fear clawed at me again, but beneath it something else burned hotter. They weren't untouchable. They were scared. Scared enough to break in, to search, to leave me rattled. That meant my small strikes were landing. The next morning, I received a text from an unknown number. Just 2 words that froze me in place. Dinner, tonight. It was from Margaret, and somehow, I knew this wasn't going to be like any dinner before. Margaret's text, dinner, tonight, sat on my screen like a summons. I stared at it for hours, weighing every option. Ignore it? Too suspicious. Show up unprepared? Suicide. But I wasn't unprepared anymore. I had proof. I had recordings, documents, my medical records, and even Rosa's copies of their plans. I just needed to use them. So I dressed carefully that evening, my nerves humming like live wires. Black slacks, neat blouse, nothing flashy, just steady, composed, unbreakable. I slipped a small recorder into my bag, tucked the copies of my medical results inside, and slid the damning documents Rosa had given me into a manila folder. My hands trembled, but my resolve was steel. Tonight, the hunter becomes the hunted. Margaret's house was lit up like a stage. Candles flickered in every window, and laughter floated out as I approached. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself up the steps. Inside, the scene was picture perfect. Ryan with a drink in hand, Laura perched elegantly at the table, Margaret at the head like a queen awaiting her court. "Emily," she said smoothly, rising to kiss my cheek. Her perfume was heavy, suffocating. "So glad you came. We were worried." I sat, my heart pounding. The food was spread lavishly, but I didn't touch it. I remembered the warning, don't eat what they give you. Instead, I folded my hands on the table and waited. The dinner began as usual, small talk, laughter that rang hollow. But beneath it, the tension was thick, electric. Finally, Margaret set down her fork, her eyes sharp. "Emily," she said softly, "you've been distant, and we've heard troubling things." Laura leaned in, her voice smooth. "Neighbors talk. Friends talk. You're saying things that make us look cruel," Ryan smirked. "Like we're plotting against you." He laughed, but it was edged with malice. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Aren't you?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Margaret's smile didn't falter, but her eyes darkened. "We only want what's best. If you're unwell, it's our duty to prepare. Families handle these things together." I pulled the folder from my bag and laid it on the table. "Then explain this." I slid out my medical records first. Clean, healthy, alive. See? I'm not dying. I'm not fragile. And yet, I pulled out the photocopies Rosa had given me, slamming them onto the polished wood. "You've already divided my life like vultures circling a corpse." Laura's face drained of color. Ryan's smirk faltered. Even Margaret's mask cracked, just for a second. "You don't know what you're talking about," Margaret said. Her voice sharp now, no longer sweet. "Oh, I do." I pulled out my phone, tapped play, and Ryan's drunken voice filled the room. "You're dead weight, Emily. And soon, you'll just be dead." Then Laura's cool tone. "Fragile things break faster when they fight back." The words hung heavy in the air, damning and undeniable. Ryan leapt to his feet, furious. "You recorded us?" "You bitch!" I stood too, my hands shaking but my voice steady. "Yes, because I knew you'd deny it. I knew you'd twist it like you always do. But this—" I waved the phone, the papers. "This doesn't lie." Laura's composure shattered, her voice rising. "Do you have any idea what you've done? These things, taken out of context, they'll ruin us." I met her gaze, unblinking. "Good." Margaret slammed her palm on the table, the sound like a gunshot. "Enough! You think you've won, Emily?" "Do you think anyone will believe you over us? We are respected, connected. You are nothing but a hysterical girl with a handful of papers." My heart thundered, but I smiled. "Then let's see what the courts think. Or the police. Or maybe the press." For the first time, fear flickered in Margaret's eyes. I gathered my folder, my phone, and turned to leave. My legs shook, but I forced them forward. Behind me, Ryan shouted, "You'll regret this." Laura hissed, "We'll destroy you." Margaret's voice followed, cold and venomous. "You have no idea what you've started." I walked out anyway, my chest heaving, my eyes stinging with tears. For the first time, I wasn't running from them. I was walking away, my proof in hand, their empire of lies cracking under the weight of truth. But when I reached my car and opened the door, I froze. On the driver's seat lay another envelope. This one wasn't from Margaret, or Ryan, or Laura. It was from the anonymous ally, the one who'd warned me before. Inside was a single sentence that made my breath catch. "They're not done. And neither should you be." I drove home that night, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. The envelope from my anonymous ally lay on the passenger seat, its single sentence replaying in my mind. "They're not done. And neither should you be." I believed it, because the moment I exposed them at dinner, I had seen it in their eyes. Fear, rage, desperation. They weren't going to fold quietly. They were going to fight back, but I wasn't afraid anymore. The fallout came quickly. Ryan called me 3 times the next morning, slurring through his words, threatening 1 minute and begging the next. "You can't do this, Em. I'll lose everything. Just burn the papers, okay?" "Forget it." I didn't answer. Laura showed up at my apartment uninvited, her heels sharp against the hallway floor. She stood in my doorway, her face pale but her voice icy. "You've made a mistake," she said flatly. "Margaret has friends in high places, judges, lawyers. Even if you try to go public, you'll be buried." I held up my phone, the screen glowing with her recorded words. "Fragile things break faster when they fight back." Her eyes flickered, fear breaking through the mask for just a moment. "You'll regret this," she hissed, before storming down the hall. Margaret, of course, was silent. No calls, no visits, just silence that felt heavier than their threats. But the silence broke in other ways. A week later, I received a call from Rosa, her voice shaking. "Señorita, something happened. The lawyers, people Margaret trusted, they are pulling away. They don't want to be part of it anymore. Too dangerous." My heart leapt. Cracks in the armor. 2 days later, Ryan's latest scam was exposed online. Investors are demanding answers. Police reports filed. His name splashed across forums, his reputation shredded. Laura faced backlash at work, too. Whispers in the courthouse. Colleagues who suddenly kept their distance. Lawyers lived on credibility, and hers was crumbling. And Margaret? Her empire of real estate quietly began to shake. A buyer pulled out of a deal. Tenants filed complaints. Small ripples that would grow into waves. Still, victory wasn't clean. I couldn't shake the fear that lingered in every shadow. My apartment felt smaller, my sleep shallow, every knock on the door making my chest tighten. One night, I woke to the sound of footsteps outside. I peered through the peephole, nothing. But when I opened the door the next morning, there was a dead rose lying on the mat. A warning. They were wounded, but they weren't finished. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the shoebox of evidence. I'd struck first and the cracks were showing. But the anonymous note was right. I couldn't stop here. If I did, they'd regroup. And next time, they'd strike harder. So I whispered to myself, steady and clear, "This isn't over. Not until they can never touch me again." That night, I drafted an email. I attached the documents, the recordings, and the medical records. Proof of everything, and with one final breath, I hovered over the send button, ready to expose my family not just to the courts, but to the entire world. My finger hovered over the send button, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat on the screen. For weeks, I had lived in fear, suffocated by whispers, mocked at dinners, erased on paper. But now, I had everything I needed, and this time I wasn't just protecting myself. I was making sure they could never erase me again. With one steady breath, I clicked send. The email flew to 3 destinations: a lawyer I trusted through work, a local journalist known for exposing corruption, and the state probate court. The attachments were undeniable: recordings, documents, medical proof. Evidence of betrayal so brazen it would ruin them in every circle they held dear. For the first time, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. The fallout came like a storm. Ryan was arrested within weeks for fraud. His latest scam unraveled under scrutiny he couldn't dodge. Mugshots of his glassy-eyed face hit the news. His golden boy charm was gone, replaced by the label of a criminal. Laura faced professional ruin. The Bar Association opened an ethics investigation after the recordings surfaced. Her perfect reputation was shattered. Clients withdrew. Colleagues whispered. Judges refused to meet her eye. The woman who once sneered at me as fragile was now the one everyone avoided. And Margaret, her silence broke. The journalist's article painted her empire as a house built on greed and manipulation. Tenants sued, investors pulled out, whispers of elder exploitation spread like wildfire. The matriarch who once ruled over us with icy control found herself exposed, her name synonymous with betrayal. Their lives crumbled, just as they had waited for mine to. And me? I wasn't rich. I wasn't suddenly invincible. But I was free. Free from their shadow, their whispers, their suffocating control. I moved into a smaller apartment outside Denver, closer to the mountains. I kept working as a nurse, but I walked into each shift taller, stronger, When my patients asked if I believed in second chances, I smiled and said, "Yes, but only if you fight for them?" Because I had. I'd fought to stay alive, to be seen, to prove that my story wasn't theirs to write, and I'd won. I don't forgive them, not because I can't, but because I don't need to. Forgiveness implies they still hold a place in my heart. They don't. I reclaimed myself, my life, my voice, and that was enough. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Would you forgive betrayal like this or walk away forever? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts.